Good afternoon, everyone. I think we will get started. So thank you for joining us for this month's Teach Educational Rounds. Here with us today, we have Stephanie Cohen, who will be presenting how to look more closely at the idea of listening within motivational interviewing. Before I hand it off to our presenter, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping slides. If you're interested in receiving a letter of completion for today's Teach Educational Round, please make sure that you have registered for this webinar and completed the pre-learning assessment. You've signed in to view this webinar using your first and last name so we can track your participation. And finally, you've completed the post-learning assessment, which will be emailed to you this afternoon, and you will have 1 week to complete that. Please note that a copy of today's presentation slides will be sent along with the recording this afternoon. This webinar is being live tweeted on Twitter, and you can follow us at PSQuitSmoking and use the hashtag TeachWebinar to post or read questions. Here's a biography of our faculty presenter, Stephanie Cohen. Stephanie is a registered social worker who received her Master's of Social Work degree in 1997 and has been working in the field of addictions and mental health ever since. For the past 20 years, Stephanie has worked in a variety of roles within the nicotine dependence clinic at CAMH, with a passion for clinical work and teaching. In 2009, Stephanie became a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. She is also an adjunct lecturer with the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Toronto. You can read more about Stephanie here. Here is a list of her disclosures, as well as our disclosures. Please note that the content of Teach Educational Rounds are centered on evidence-based guidelines from the following sources. These materials, as well as the verbal presentation and any discussions, represent only general principles, and they do not replace the need for clinical assessments or treatment plans by healthcare professionals. Please feel welcome to use the chat feature during today's webinar to provide any feedback or post any questions. To use the chat feature, you can click on the speech bubble icon in the control panel, and please ensure that you select all participants to make sure that the panelists and the host can read your questions. With that, I will leave it to our presenter, Stephanie, to take it away. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the webinar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Stephanie. We can hear you.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I am so sorry, everyone. So we finally worked out some of these technical issues that we've been having. Stephanie, can you see the slides?
I can see learning objectives.
Okay, yeah. Great. So then I'm going to pass the ball on to you, and you should be able to change the slides, hopefully.
Okay, let's see how that goes. I see that I've got the ball. Now, how do I find the slides in here? Sorry, everyone. Stephanie, I can't see how to go back to the slides.
So you might just need to scroll your screen to the, the left, and the slides will be on one page, the chat will be on the next, and then the participants on another. So if that doesn't work though, then I can change the slides for you.
All right, so I can't figure out how to do that. So why don't you, I can see the attendees. A list of attendees, so that's all I can see right now. So what if you change the slide for me?
Yeah, I can do that for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of the slides with you so you can see?
I will in a second. So I know we were on objectives. Okay. So thank you everyone for your patience. I feel like I should have called this presentation The Sounds of Silence rather than good listening. But let's proceed. We'll kind of do this improv and blind style. So in terms of the objectives, it's really to get a sense of what good listening is, what it looks like from an MI perspective, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what the mindset involves. We'll talk about the writing reflex a little bit, that concept in MI and how that impacts our listening skills. And then at the end, ideally share some tips and tricks for improving our good listening skills. So I have some ideas to put forth to share, but I'd also love to hear your ideas and things that work for you guys. So that's it in terms of objectives. What's up next, Stephanie? I have,
What is good listening?
Oh, okay. There we go. I'm on the right page here. So we've covered all the teach stuff. So what is good listening? So again, we're talking about this from an MI perspective. This skill is fundamental to MI, but it's definitely not unique to MI. I mean, good listening is part of good communication in general, and it's important for all of us as social creatures, social animals, to interact with other people and form connections. So listening is something that we all do all the time. But I guess where we differ is in how we listen, what we listen to, and how we respond. And that can make a difference. And so this skill is important not only in our work life, but our personal life. And it's something that really can't be underestimated. It can improve our relationships, our ability to connect with people personally and professionally, and it feels good to be listened to people when they're listened to and someone gives them their undivided attention, they feel valued and validated, and that what we have to say matters. So it's truly a gift. And listening at the same time, so it's not just about what we say, but what we don't say when we're listening. Because sometimes it's really about sort of getting out of the way for people, essentially, and giving people the floor. And it can be tempting, especially in healthcare, to solve people's problems, to want to steer them down the right path, offer them suggestions or advice, share your expertise. But the timing is important for that. And unfortunately, we can all be helpful with the best of intentions at the wrong time. So we'll touch on that a little bit as well. So again, like I said, in terms of MI, because I'll be looking at this from an MI bias or MI lens, good listening is often referred to as reflective listening, one of the OR skills. But it also shows up in MI. That's sort of the observable component. There's an internal component to listening as well. And again, it shows up in MI in the spirit piece. The A of the CAPE, if you like that acronym, or PACE, if that's the acronym you're familiar with. The skill of accurate empathy, and because MI is based heavily on the work of Carl Rogers, it's actually Carl Rogers' term, accurate empathy, which initially I think he called empathic listening. And Thomas Gordon has another term that's one of Rogers' students. He referred to this skill as active listening. So that's sort of the terms for good listening and from a couple of different but shared perspectives, really. And we can go to the next slide there. And this is about sort of, again, we're looking at it from an MI lens, so we're going to use that language of reflective listening. And like I said, there's an internal component to this process that there's essentially, broadly speaking, two steps involved. That first, the person, the listener, needs to be able to put themselves in the speaker's shoes. And then the next step is that they have to demonstrate verbally that they've done this by offering their best guess as to their understanding as to what the speaker was saying. And in doing this, offering these reflective statements, this process of checking in with the speaker around what we heard and what we think they mean, that creates a really strong therapeutic alliance, rapport, and empathic connection. And again, that's sort of one of the core pieces of motivational interviewing. And we can just go up to the next slide there. So this slide speaks to accurate empathy. And again, like I mentioned earlier, that's a component of MI Spirit, but really speaks to that first step, that internal process, the ability to put someone's, yourself into the shoes of another person. And even in the most recent edition of the Motivational Interviewing textbook by Millers and Rolnick, they'll quote Rogers. And so this is just an example of a quote. This idea that what we're trying to do is to understand the client's inner world of private and personal meaning as if it was our own, but without ever losing the as if quality. And I have this more complex quote that was really nearby right before my computer chaos typed in. Here it is. So here's another quote, it's a quote that Roger said about accurate empathy. And it's quite long, so I'm going to trim it down for the sake of time. But in his words, Rogers would say that accurate empathy is to be with another, and that for the time being, you lay aside your own views and values in order to enter another's world without prejudice. In some sense, it means that you lay aside yourself. This can only be done by persons who are secure enough in themselves that they know they will not get lost in what may turn out to be the strange or bizarre world of the other, and that they can comfortably return to their own world where they wish. So again, it's that suspension of our own beliefs and thoughts and ideas momentarily, again, not getting lost completely and forgetting them, but in those moments where we're really tuning in and paying attention to the words the person is saying to us, we're able to immerse ourselves almost completely in those ideas and thoughts. So when we will proceed with the slides. Are we on reflective listening? What does it look like?
Yes.
Okay, just checking in. So again, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with reflective listening. If you're interested in motivational interviewing, which I'm assuming many of you are who joined this and hung in there through the technical difficulties, are familiar with what a reflective statement looks like. And again, it's really that process of, if we break down communication, there's the words the speaker says, which, again, our language, as precise as we like to believe it is at times, is still quite ambiguous. So, sometimes I might not say what I mean in the most concise, articulate way. But at the time, that's the best I can come up with to try to convey my thoughts or feelings. And then the person I'm speaking to, there's, once I've sort of encoded my feelings and thoughts and try to express them, the person I'm speaking to has to hear them, and there's some accuracy involved there. And then they need to decode. And it's that decoding process that becomes explicit in motivational interviewing, which we tend to do automatically. And so sometimes in learning this approach, it feels quite strange to verbally check out, if somebody tells us that they're outgoing, that we offer, okay, you mean that you like to try new things, or you're extroverted, that we're checking in to make sure that our understanding is accurate. And sometimes it is, and then sometimes it's not. But as long as these statements are offered with genuine curiosity, even if we go off course a little bit or miss the mark a bit, generally it's still a conversational flow that's maintained. And so when we do check out the listener's perceived meaning, sometimes in the beginning people find it helpful to use those stems or those partial phrases at the beginning, like it sounds like, so you feel like, it seems as, but again, those don't have to be there. You might just offer it out as, you mean that, you like to be with people all the time. And reflection styles, they can range from simple to basically parroting or paraphrasing what somebody says to more complex. And if we go to the next slide, it's more visual, and you'll see it's a simile or a description, a metaphor for what one of my colleagues in the States, who does a three-day introductory and advanced semi-course, a participant at the end of this 3-day course said a couple of years ago, I thought really eloquently. She said to, and this mentee I'm talking about, his workshop, his name is Steve Berg-Smith. She said, well, if asking questions is like knocking on someone's door in MI, then listening in MI feels like I've gone into someone's house. And sometimes you'll hear the analogy that being with someone in an MI way, it's reflective piece, going to their house. It's like going into their house and sitting on a couch and looking through a photo album with them of things that are important to them and their memories. And then she said, and if we're going into someone's house, then I think it's really important that we remember that we should be respectful, and that once we're invited in, you never go in and you don't rearrange someone's furniture. And I thought that was just so eloquent and powerful, this metaphor for, when we are invited in and someone opens up and shares their perspective or understanding, opinions, beliefs, that it's not about us going in and trying to fix them or change them, at least from an MI practitioner's perspective, because it's a strength-based approach. So the people coming to us aren't broken, and they're not coming because they need to be fixed. Really, this foundational premise, part of the spirit piece, is that we're doing this evoking and trying to understand their perspective and worldview, because that's going to help us tap into their strengths and resources. And they probably have, if not everything they need to make the change they're ambivalent about, but almost everything they need. And so it's just us going in and getting, to the best of our ability, a view, from their shoes. And this metaphor, I thought, aligns too really nicely with Roger's ideas about client-centered therapy, and that we go into someone's world, but we're not there to disturb it. We're just there to understand. That's the first part, and that's really the main goal of listening, especially in the engagement piece. And so the next slide talks a little bit about what does that sound like. And as you probably are well aware already, if you're already familiar with MI or working in a way that aligns with this, or using reflections, active listening, that when we use these statements, when we offer these reflective statements, they have this feel of a conversation, more so than if we were to ask a question. There's not this demand placed on a client that a question can place. And so it's really not about just what we say, but how we say it. So generally, when we ask a question, our inflection, our inflection at the end of the statement goes up. So even if our clients don't come with transcripts, but if I was to reflect, it was no big deal, and I say it in a way that it's a question, it sounds like, it was no big deal, versus if I offer a reflection, it was no big deal. It's a different inflection at the end of the sentence there. And sometimes when people are learning this skill of offering a reflection, the only thing that they need to tweak to make their question into an excellent example of a simple or complex reflection is just the delivery, leaving out the inflection at the end and saying it as a statement rather than a question, and seeing, feeling what that likes to make the conversation flow. And so, again, with reflective listening, it's about putting the emphasis, when we're doing reflective listening, the emphasis is not on us as a listener, but on the speaker. And the reason for offering these statements to, communicate that we're doing our best to understand someone's perspective and what they're saying, is that it invites the speaker to say more and helps convey that we're present with them, we're alongside, and we're doing our best to understand them. Now, are we at the slide? I'm not sure. I didn't ask you, Stephanie, to skip forward, but what slide are we on now? Are we on common responses being listened to?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And so, if I was on my A game and able to log into this webinar and get to the slide, I would have hidden it and maybe ask you guys, because it's sort of, I feel a little bit ironic that I'm doing this webinar and listening, but I'm interested to hear what you guys know and what you guys would say about listening. I would have asked if I could see the chat. Actually, I probably can see the chat on my phone. Sort of, what it feels like to be listened to. But in terms of these responses on the slide, is there anything, it's not exhaustive by any means, but is there anything that anyone would like to add in the chat or against the microphone about how it feels to be listened to?
Stephanie, are you able
I found the chat.
Okay.
I
Perfect.
just was able to
gonna
find the
look them
chat.
up.
Something went my way right now. So thank you guys for participating. Yeah, more willing to share the truth, loved, trusted, appreciated, feel noticed. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, it does. It feels good for the listener to be present, to be acknowledged, to not feel invisible. Sometimes our clients don't have many places where they get undivided positive attention or disregard, or somebody just listens to them. Feeling truly heard, yeah. And appreciated, yeah. Thank you for this input, non-judgmental. That's another key piece, right? If people are going to open up and share these things, they'll keep talking if they don't feel judged, and it feels safe to do so. Which I guess where accurate empathy, that still aligns with that piece of spirit of acceptance, right? Acceptance doesn't mean we have to agree with our clients, because we don't always agree with people 100% of the time. But they can at least feel safe to have a different opinion or view, not feeling judged. If we go to the next slide, Stephanie, what is it? Is it asking is not listening?
That is correct.
Okay. So this just speaks to that, in healthcare, we often ask a lot of questions. It's a part of our job. I know in my job, part of my clinical role is to do assessments, and that's, a small booklet of questions that I go through with somebody to get a sense of their health, their substance use, mental health, support system, treatment goals, and so forth. And sometimes, we get the sense that because somebody's asking a lot of questions about us, that they're listening to us, but that's not necessarily true. Just because we ask a lot of questions doesn't necessarily mean we're good listeners. Of course, I'm not assuming that of this group, but, broadly speaking, in healthcare. And hearing is different than listening. And listening, it involves, what we say verbally, but there's also a nonverbal component as well. But even when there's that nonverbal piece, it's more than just being silent. And so good listening truly involves an active component and some nonverbal components too. And so if we go to the next slide, I'm going to ask Stephanie or Sophie, my two wonderful colleagues who are supporting me here, to play this story called The Rabbit Listened. And it's a short story. I'm a big fan of children's books, not just because I have a small litter of children who are getting big, but I think they're brilliant in the way that they can concisely convey points. So I have like a favorite story I'll use for, explaining CBT sometimes. This I came across from a colleague in the U.S. That I used to talk about not just listening, but also the spirit of MI. So It's on YouTube. Just you can let me know when it's all queued up and ready to play. It's only 3 minutes and 32 seconds long.
Okay, I think we're all queued up and ready to play. So hopefully this will all.
Right, let's roll. Yeah.
Okay, let me know.
Sounds good.
One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special. Something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Grr, roar, how horrible. I bet you feel so evil. Let's shout about it. Grr, roar, grr. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Trumpa-duh, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, well, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tisk, tisk, what a mess. Let's throw it all away. And the snake, shh, let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually, they all left until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing."
All right. Thank you guys for showing that story reading with Sean, who I think is an excellent story reader. What did everyone think about that short story? I see someone has it on hold from the library already. Thank you. Someone shared they loved it. I can see the chat. That's one thing I can do. So thank you. What, in terms of conveying MI spirit, what aspects were conveyed? What's your takeaway from this? People are liking the sentiments. Yeah, Heather commented, it speaks to the value of being present. And that listening, I thought too, I agree with both what you say, Heather, and Kevin, listening is more than being silent. Or it's more than, listening is more than listening, yeah. Yeah, and how it's about the client and what they want, not us. Someone commented on the patience and waiting, yeah, till the time is right. And Shannon, I can see your comment about speaking to the need of not having to solve the problem for them and giving them autonomy to solve the problem on their own. And just as the silence there, yeah, it's a nice example of how silence is powerful. Not passive, though, you know, the rabbit's alongside, like all of you pointed out. So, yeah, thanks. Is there anything else before we sort of move on from the story about the rabbit listened? I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. It felt appropriate to also have a story when we're talking about listening. So now we're going to go to the next slide, if that's okay, Stephanie. And I just see I think that's nonverbal listening, which we just really spoke to. I think that book, and you guys commented on it as well, that, you know, that there's more than words involved in listening, and that it's silent sometimes, but not passive. So maybe we can go to the mindset of a good listener. And that slide speaks to just some of the qualities that, you know, I feel are sort of essential to being a good listener. And I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but we've got the empathic piece, the compassionate piece. And for me, what stands out is curious. And that, you know, genuine curiosity, and with this goal of just wanting to understand the other person's views, perspectives, thoughts on the issue. I'd also argue that with this mindset is this assumption or this kind of core belief that what the other person, there's value in doing this, that it's important to understand the perspectives and the worldview of the speaker. So we want to give them the floor and hear what they have to say. And what if we go to the next slide? So in spite of the skills and the mindset, and if you're really proficient in active listening, reflective statements, all these things, there's still a lot of things that can get in the way of good listening. So this is a busy picture, a cluttered picture. It's a little bit symbolic of a cluttered mind, but there's countless obstacles being rushed. And then we also have the new, you know, another layer of complexity, which I thought about it. I looked at this picture. I should have put in a shot with, you know, a mask or some sort of pandemic reference to this slide, because that's, again, something else that adds another layer of complexity to our work, regardless if we're working, you know, maybe you're still working in seeing people in person, but faces are covered, partially covered, or you're not. So in my case, everything is either virtual or over the phone. So I'm not directly in the room with people. Not to mention just other distractions, right? Environmental distractions. And if we go to the next slide, are we on the roadblock slide, Stephanie? Checking in?
Yep, just on the roadblock
Okay.
slide now.
Yeah, so I guess looking in the chat, sort of from an MI perspective, or from your own perspective, what do you think is sort of one of the biggest roadblocks to good listening? Like, what for you do you find gets in the way the most, or just generally, what do you think can interfere with our good listening skills and intentions the most? I see people, time, workload issues, client motivation, feeling rushed, to be comfortable with not solving. Heather commented, that's hard not to do. I agree, that's hard. It's hard to be quiet sometimes, wanting to solve their problems for them. Yeah, our good intentions can get in the way for sure, which is probably why you're all in, helping professions. Time requirements. Yeah, I can feel like, do I have time to listen? Transference, countertransference, writing reflex, biases. Yeah. So there's external factors and there's internal factors. And if we go to the next slide, looking at the time, I think we probably have time to watch this because this clip is like about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So if it's up and ready, why don't we watch this clip that kind of speaks to the yes, but I've got such great advice, which again, some of you have alluded to that it is hard sometimes to keep quiet and not share good advice, especially if we feel like someone's going down a wrong path or, we just don't have a good feeling about how things are going to unfold when we hear someone's plans for the weekend.
Okay, I just have that video up now. If you want to let me know if it's okay.
Yeah, we can let this one roll, and maybe some of you have seen this before. This is one of my favorites too. It's short, but it makes a great point.
There's pressure, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, the thing that scares me most is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
That sounds really hard.
Ow!
Come on. If you would just
Don't.
Thank you, guys. So I'm sure some of you have probably seen that before. But, yeah, it is an entertaining clip. And it does. I've seen it a lot now, but it still puts a smile on my face. It's actually, and I didn't get to see it this time, I just got to hear it. And hearing it was quite powerful, I might say. Yeah, so if we think about this little interaction, what would we say the mindset and our heart set of the listener? What do you think his intentions are, and how does he convey those? And I see in the comments, yeah, most people get in the trap of the nail as a quick fix. Yeah, I agree. I would argue, again, very generally and broadly speaking, though, as in the healthcare professions, we often tend to focus on the nail. And we're too solution focused. That's right. Someone else has commented that. Yeah, and Carol, shares that, yeah, there's good intentions there. She senses he cares about her, but wants to solve the problem. And so they are, these that MI metaphor, they are wrestling, more than dancing there, but they do shift a bit. So what happens, I guess, when there's a shift in that interaction briefly? Where do you say there's a positive shift? Yeah, the client was grateful to be heard when she finally said, like, she wants him to listen, and then he does listen, and he begins. Yeah, and everyone's, a lot of comments about the problem might seem so obvious to us. And it seems like an easy solution, maybe sometimes from where we stand, but the client has to get there. And she was a lot, less defensive and more open once he stepped back and he listened. So I think that's a great example, basically a really quick but powerful illustration of the writing reflex that can kind of put a smile on our face. And if we go to kind of some of the next slides, we'll skip a few slides because, I think there's one thing we focus on the nail. There's a slide that listening is key. This is actually from a former colleague. He's retired now. But it's kind of speaking to the time pressures because it's true. If you've only got, maybe you have a 15 minutes off for somebody, but you're running late. The clients before that were all late and you end up having maybe 7 minutes for someone. It can feel faster just to give information or advice rather than listen. But sometimes, again, our good intentions can backfire. And maybe we can't listen as much as they'd like, but we can offer, 4 minutes of listening and still give them a little bit of the floor. So, his quote is, act like you've got all day and it will take 15 minutes. Act like you've got 15 minutes and it might take all day. That sense of it's hard to hide when we feel rushed or preoccupied or we have a different agenda, those external pressures. So then maybe we'll kind of fast track for the sake of time because we're 5 minutes left. The other upcoming slides are on the writing reflex, Thomas Gordon's roadblocks, and there's one reining in the writing reflex. So those are all, again, Not About the Nail video really highlights the writing reflex really well. And again, a colleague of mine, Steve Berg-Smith, I think I've already quoted him. He had that, the client in his workshop gave that beautiful metaphor about being in someone's home and not rearranging their furniture. He'll often present people with Thomas Gordon's 12 communication roadblocks and sort of ask them at the end of the workshop, okay, pick one that you're going to commit to not going to, acknowledging that we all do this, and it doesn't come from, it doesn't come from a place of bad intention. It often comes from a place of good intentions, but sometimes doing these things can backfire. So it's just, this slide's really just about, okay, take a moment to pause and reflect on, okay, which one of these things do you do? And what does it feel like? Just, I guess really the key is before we can do our best listening, we have to listen internally to ourselves and have this awareness, and sort of tune into what's going on with us physiologically. Are our shoulders tense? Are we feeling something in our stomach? Is our heartbeat up? Are we feeling rushed? Again, and it's different for everybody, the signs and things that you'll notice. But just reflecting on those moments when, or even anticipating, when is it hard to hold our tongue or not dispense advice? And what does that feel like? And just breathing. And then the last couple slides are just some tips for improving our listening skills. And I apologize for rushing through these. So these first 3 tips, they're taken from a YouTube talk in 2011. And briefly, these 3 ideas. So one is just, Julian Treasure talks about immersing yourselves in 3 minutes of silence, which I kind of chuckled when I heard because I don't think I can find 3 minutes of silence in my house. That would be really, really difficult to do. I mean, I guess I could with headphones, but silence is very rare here. Even if people aren't home, like there's animals and there's neighbors, and total silence seems like a pretty rare experience that I get. But he said even if you can't do total silence, even just quiet, just intentional quiet, just to recalibrate, 3 minutes a day of just being in a quiet space, as quiet as possible, and recalibrating can do wonders for our listening skills, according to Julian. The next part is called, exercise called the mixer, and that is just really taking, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to intentionally listen to the sounds around you. If you have sounds going on in your house, your backyard, your office, just paying attention to the sounds and seeing how many different sounds you can pick up. Do you hear traffic? Do you hear voices? How many voices? Do you hear animals, birds, different chirps? What's going on there? And a similar exercise he proposes is called Savoring the Mundane. And again, that's really just paying attention to the everyday sounds in your routine and just kind of noticing the rhythm or the musicality of those things, whether it be, the blow dryer, the washing machine, kitchen appliances, footsteps going up and down the stairs. In my house, it's dog wrestling, kids noises, a whole lot of noises. But just, again, tuning in and paying attention to those sounds. And the next slide is just MI-specific ideas. If you're interested in tweaking any MI skills, whether that be reflective practice, just, some ideas for deliberate self-study. And one suggestion, again, is Rose and Green's Building MI Skills Practitioners Workbook. There's 2 editions, first and second. Self-study might be a more feasible option these days, depending, because our work environments are changed and we're not, our working in our settings and with our teams might look a lot different these days and indefinitely. So there's a couple of exercises there specific to listening that I've pulled up, but there's lots of great exercises in there. And there's sample answers, which can be really helpful. Again, not because there's just one right way to answer these things, but to get you a sense if you're on course or not. And of course, there's recording your sessions and self-review. That takes a little more technology and effort, but it is invaluable if you play some of your sessions back and just reflect upon what were you thinking, where else could you have gone, what did you like? And then even one step sort of better in terms of optimizing your skill set is getting observed coaching and feedback from somebody else. So you've got some other input. And I see that it's 101, so I've gone over time and I apologize. The final slide is just a meditation, part of a meditation that Bill Miller does before he goes in and works with a client, and that's taken from the MI3 textbook and some resources at the end. So I was really hoping, I'm sorry for the technological glitches, because I'd love to hear what you guys are all doing in terms of listening skills or just, coming from a place of an uncluttered mind and getting that sense of being calm. But thank you all for your time and your patience today and for listening to me.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I apologize again to everyone for those technical difficulties, but thank you so much for everyone's participation. Just very quickly, a reminder that a link to the evaluation and post-learning assessment will be sent by email by the end of day today, and you will have 1 week to complete that if you would like a letter of completion. As well as if anyone has any last-minute questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat now. I can share those with Stephanie and then share responses if that works with you, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy. Anything at all, yeah. Email me as needed. Thank you for your time and your patience. It's greatly appreciated.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. And so yeah, just a reminder, if you participated as a group, make sure to email teach@camh.ca with a complete list of participants by 2 p.m. this afternoon. And then our next Teach Educational Rounds webinar will be October 28th on adapting tobacco cessation interventions for people with severe mental illness and addiction, and registration for that will be coming soon. Thank you again so much, everyone, for participating, and thank you so much, Stephanie, for your presentation.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for all the support, and you too, Sophie. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of week.